If you can hear that noise in the background, that's the furnace. Now, that's one thing I want to talk about today because it kept me up all night. Well, it's May in the Midwest, and the lows got down to the mid 30s last night. Now, when you have a travel trailer, and since these things aren't the best insulated, they lose heat fast, which means that the furnace has to cycle on and off over the course of the night. Now, for me, I didn't get the best sleep because I was constantly either cold or I was hearing the furnace turn on. So, one thing that I did is I bumped the temperature up probably to about 71, 72 degrees. And then I immediately, once it got to that heat, I immediately dropped it down to 60. And then that bought me maybe about an hour's worth of time. I would assume that the frequency in which it turns on and off, on and off, on and off, that can't be good for the furnace system. So if you're familiar with that or these systems, whether or not that has any impact, I would assume it does. Because anything that you constantly turn on, turn off, it probably limits the lifespan or some of the components inside of it. So that's one thing that I'm going to keep track of. Now, based on minimal research that I did, and to be honest with you, I don't know what these terms mean, but the standard travel trailer insulation is typically R7 to R11. Now, to use that as comparison to residential walls, you're looking at R13 to R21. So obviously there's a little bit of a difference there, and it's almost double. If we look at floor insulation, it's often worse. Now, if you've ever walked around barefoot or even just with socks on, especially in colder temperatures, you can feel the difference. Now, if you think about it, it's just simply your floor covering, maybe just laid upon a very minimal, if at all, any insulation, but then you have the plywood. So it makes it very easy for those temperatures to escape. And when we talk about windows, most of them, especially in entry to mid-level trailers, are single pane, which allows massive heat loss. And the more windows you have, the faster that heat is going to escape. For the River Forest R-Pod specifically, the travel trailer that we bought, it's a lightweight trailer. And when you're talking about lightweight trailers, you're talking about thinner walls. And obviously that means less insulation. I don't mind sleeping in cold weather. Our Murphy bed is positioned right by the front window. And for those that are familiar with the R-Pod, the front window is a generally large window, and you can feel the cool air coming in from that. Now, that wasn't the big issue for me. Like I said, I don't mind sleeping in cold weather. It's the furnace that kicks on and off over the course of the night. But you have to understand what you're getting yourself into when you're purchasing these lightweight trailers. Fringe season camping, you're going to have to make the trade-off. You're going to experience some of the cold weather, especially if it's going to be below 40s in May. Since we're talking about fringe camping season, let's talk about the pros and the cons. For one, the campgrounds are empty. The one that I'm at, there's a ton of vacant spaces. Not many people are seeking to go camping when they know that the lows are going to be hovering right around freezing. And you'll notice that sites open up, especially the ones that would typically be booked during peak season. And when I booked this particular campsite, it seemed like they were all booked. This is the first weekend that they're open of the season. And I wouldn't be surprised that some people canceled their reservations with knowing that the temperatures were going to be dipping down into the 30s. Another pro is that prices can drop significantly. Some campgrounds are 30 to 50% cheaper when you're not dealing with peak seasons. Another pro is that wildlife is more active. I looked out early this morning and I saw a couple of deer that were at the campsite across from mine, which was kind of cool to see. But if you think about it, if there's a ton of people around and every campsite is full, that's probably less likely to happen. I think the biggest pro for me is that you appreciate the warmth more in the cold weather. And when you feel that, you don't take it for granted. And that's probably one of the biggest things I think I appreciate with the fact of camping in colder weather is that you bundle up a little bit more. And when that heat kicks on and when you feel it, you appreciate it a little bit more. Now let's talk about the cons. Some campgrounds aren't fully open yet. This particular campground opened May 1st. I know a campground that we're going up into the Upper Peninsula of Michigan doesn't open until May 22nd. So it pushes that camping season about a month and a half further than some of the southern Midwest campgrounds. And also the amenities are limited. Access to water. The campsites may be open, but access to water or other even bathrooms, they could be closed and you don't have full access of the campground if you're using it. And that may factor into some of the decreased pricing. Another issue with fringe season camping is pedestal issues with your electrical at your campsite. I experienced this exact problem with the campsite that I pulled into, and my surge protector flagged an error, and I had to switch campsites. First weekend of season problems are real, and you have to make sure that you know how you're going to approach, especially when you're utilizing other mechanicals or other resources at campgrounds that haven't been used for a few months. Another con is that propane burns faster in cold weather. So you want to make sure that you budget accordingly, either bring an extra tank or have access to be able to refill if you're running a bit low. Now, another con that you may experience in fringe season camping is condensation on the windows inside your trailer. Now, when we first got the trailer and opened it up and we were going through it, it was colder outside and we turned the heater on and we noticed condensation on the windows, which can lead to a big issue over time. Now, we recently invested in a dehumidifier, which has pretty much solved that problem, but understand that the conflicting temperatures, whether it's colder outside, warmer inside when you're running the furnace, condensation can be an issue, and also vice versa. When it's warm outside and it's cold inside while you're running the AC, you want to make sure that you have a solution to combat that. Another one is water hookups can be tricky. Now, I mentioned that some campgrounds haven't fully turned on their systems yet, but they may have access around the campground and may not be readily accessible at your campsite. So you want to make sure that you at least ask before booking, or at least test it when you get to the campsite before you hook everything up, whether or not there's water accessible. Dump stations can be limited or closed. Now, I know some campgrounds, if they do have them at the campsites, they may not be fully accessible yet, and you may have to use an off-site dump station. So be mindful of that when you're booking your campsites. Now, to wrap things up, fringe season camping is worth it, but you have to go in with eyes wide open. You have to understand what you're getting yourself into, what the campsites are going to give you access to and what they're not, and whether or not you're willing to put up with that, and obviously checking the weather and being able to be flexible if the campsites allow you to reschedule, taking advantage of that if by chance you don't want to be out during colder temperatures. Know your propane situation before you go out. Having an extra propane tank is also helpful, because you never know how much you're going to use and how quickly it's going to be used up. The surge protector setup is even more important early on in the season when these campgrounds are first opening up. Understand a lot of these locations are more reactive with their systems than they are proactive, and a lot of them are relying on the status of the campgrounds from the season prior. So use a surge protector to protect the electrical components in your RV this season. Dress the trailer like you would dress yourself in cold weather. Layers help. So putting a rug on the floor, using window coverings do make a difference. Now, I want to hear from you. What are some fringe season camping tips that nobody really talks about? How do you handle the furnace cycling at night? And are you a year-round camper, or do you stick to one season? As always, appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next video.